Ducks fans, are you ready? You are listening to the Ducks and Pucks podcast with your hosts, Mike Walters and Eddie Jones. This is the #1 home for Anaheim Ducks talk and analysis. Here we go.
All right, welcome back to the podcast. Hope everybody had a safe and happy New Year. And over this road trip that the Ducks went on, they did pretty well. They played in 3 games, winning 2 out of 3, getting 5 points out of 6. Kind of what we talked about, Eddie. We'll go over those games. We'll talk about the big homestand coming up, 8 games at Honda Center. And we have tons of fan questions this week, so we're going to try to get to as many of them as we possibly can. We also have some of the All-Star news that we'll get you caught up on, and some of the junior hockey as well. So let's start with this road trip, Eddie. We talked about this. We hoped that the Ducks would win 2 out of 3, and we talked about Calgary being a big game. And the Ducks did well on this road trip. They ended up, getting 5 points out of 6. They ended up passing Edmonton and Calgary in the process. And it all started with John Gibson against Calgary. Eddie goes for the shutout, and the Ducks end up winning this one 1-0.
Yeah, and a lot of people were saying this was the perfect road game, and I mean, you can't really get more perfect in this game. Gibson only had to stop 14 shots, which I believe is a season low for the Ducks, allowing in shots in a game. And I mean, they allow the third lowest shots per game in the league, which is something they've been good at all season, along with the penalty kill. So I mean, the defense isn't the issue, and getting 1 goal in this game, usually you would want to score a couple more, but Gibson shut the door, and the Ducks show that you don't have to score a ton of goals to win a game if they play strong defense.
Yeah, and that was kind of the theme on this road trip. They played great defense. They blocked 14 shots in this game, which has been a key. What they've done a little bit better, I've noticed too, at least in the last week or two, is they seem to be clogging the blue lineup a little bit better, Eddie. They usually got at least 3 players there, and it's making it difficult for the other team to come in there and get the forecheck going.
Yeah, and I mean, even with some of the guys stepping in too, Theodore stepped in and he played really well. And for usually getting criticized for having a lot of guys pinching in on defense, the guys like Lindholm and Vaughn and even the defensive guys and Stoner and BX have all stepped up, and everybody's bought into this system. And over the 3 games of the road trip, it worked almost to perfection.
Definitely. And you mentioned Theodore. In this game, he had 1 shot on net. He saw the power play for a little bit, for a minute 24, which we kind of expected. And, we'll see him again on the power play later in this road trip. But this was a good game all around. The Ducks played Calgary. Calgary had won 11 in a row at home. The Ducks were able to break that streak. And at the end, too, a little bit of antics, too, Eddie. Ryan Kesler shooting at the empty net right as the buzzer goes off. Weidman goes nuts. 2 or 3 Calgary players basically just jump on Kesler, and we posted that video up on the recap on the YouTube channel if you didn't see it already. And Kesler came to the aid of Getzlaf came to the aid of Kesler there, pulling away Weidman. And a lot of fans were upset about this, Eddie. They thought Weidman might have gotten some additional discipline after the fact. He ended up not getting a game misconduct. Only Kesler did. It didn't really matter. It was all academic. The game was over. But what did you think about the play at the end and, Weidman's actions and the league not really reviewing it?
I think he definitely deserved a little bit extra. It wasn't the worst thing we've ever seen. And I think the fact that Kesler does shoot the puck after the horn goes off, and it kind of warrants a little bit of a response from the Calgary teammates, and it is excessive, and it is kind of some sucker punches to the head. But what does Kesler expect shooting the puck into the net after the whistle? I am a little bit surprised that they didn't even. Maybe not a suspension, but a fine or something like that. But it wasn't as serious, I think, as some people were putting it out to be.
Yeah, I agree, and it's one of those unwritten rules. I had a lot of questions after that game. People were asking, well, what's the big deal? If you have an offside and the whistle's blowing, you shoot the puck at the net and you hit the goalie, is that different than shooting it at an empty net? For some people, I guess it is, but to me, it really isn't. The goalie's got all those pads. It's not like you're going to hurt the goalie. It's more of a kind of a respect thing, I guess, Eddie. That's kind of the way I look at it. There's no real rule in the NHL book. You can go look. It's not in there. It's just kind of an unwritten thing that the guys don't do to each other. That's kind of my best take on it, Eddie.
Yeah, I know you nailed it. It's a respect thing. I mean, you see the same thing in soccer too. If it's called offside and the guy shoots the ball into the net, it's more of a time wasting thing in soccer more than anything. But it's just disrespectful to do that. I mean, I don't see why exactly it's considered disrespectful, but I mean, just it's been brought over generations in the game, and it's just like you said, it's an unwritten rule now, and you're really not supposed to do it, but. Kessler's the kind of guy who likes to get underneath other guys' skin, so I'm not too surprised it was him.
Yeah, exactly. And we'll see that later on in this the road trip. The Ducks then went into Edmonton, and basically we had the same result here. Gibson gets the start in net. The Ducks win again, 1-0, Eddie, and we basically see the repeat performance that we saw against Calgary.
Yeah, we finally got to see Getzlaf get another goal here. He ripped a power play goal past Cam Talbot on kind of a weak backhand, but he gets his second goal in 3 games and another one on the power play. But yeah, Gibson had a great game, another 1-0 shutout, and but Cam Talbot really stole the show and did deserve, even with the loss, he deserved the first start of the game. I mean, the Ducks had a lot of chances, especially Sammy Vatanen had a chance to make it 2-0 or a pile on some more goals, and he stood strong, tried to obviously keep his team in it, but luckily for us, Gibson was just as good and hold out for another 1-0 win.
Yeah, and finally Getzlaf's kind of got it going a little bit. He's had 2 goals in the last 3 games. He also had that power play goal against Philadelphia back on Sunday too. So it's good to see him getting up there and finally getting some goals and helping out finally. And the Ducks did the same thing in this game. They blocked shots. They had 16 block shots in this game as well. And that's kind of been the key. And they've been doing that pretty well the last couple games. Another big key in this one was Gibson. As we've talked about before, the Ducks got back-to-back shutouts on the road. And I know I confused a few people, and I apologize for that, but it was back-to-back road shutouts during the regular season that the Ducks have achieved for the first time. If you remember, Ziggy did it against Minnesota back in the playoffs in 2003. So this was the first time during the regular season, though, Eddie. And great job by Gibson in these last 2 games.
Yeah, he hasn't really had to face a ton of shots. He obviously faced more than 14 in this game, but he's made some key saves. The Ducks have, like I said before, they've all bought into this defensive system. I think they realize they're not going to score a ton of goals, and they've decided to try and win every game 1-0, which, I mean, it does backfire a little bit in the Vancouver game, barring some bad luck as well. But if you're gonna play this sort of system, you're gonna need great goaltending, and for the Calgary and the Edmonton game, he was perfect. So.
Yeah, and that brings us to like as you mentioned, the Vancouver game. A lot of people kind of thought Gibson might have, wanted to get the start in this game, which, he ended up not getting it. It ended up being Anderson this time, and Anderson actually played very well in this game. Yeah, he did give up 1 goal, but he was screened on that play, so it wasn't probably the easiest goal to stop, but probably one he wanted back. But again, he was screened on that play, and a little bit unfortunate. The Ducks kind of did the same formula here, Eddie. Kessler scored early, had his long celebration because the Vancouver fans love him so much, and it looked like the Ducks were going to go for the third 1-0 win, but unfortunately they ended up tied, went to overtime. They didn't lose in overtime, but they ended up losing in the shootout.
Yeah, and it's an unfortunate goal too. I mean, Kessler scrapping in front of the net, he gets a power play goal. I didn't think we are kind of sitting there wondering if this is going to be a third 1-0 win on the road, and for a while there it looked like it, and then it's just the type of goal that goes in this season. Tanev just takes a harmless wrist shot and hits nobody, and just flies straight into the top corner. Anderson can't see it; he's screened by a couple guys, and that's just the type of goal that's been going in. And on the other end, the Ducks hit 5 posts in this game, which is typical for this season. I mean, Bieksa said at the end of the game, he said it's just the way our season has gone. And I mean, I didn't want to believe it in the beginning of the season. I thought you can't really just blame not scoring goals on puck luck, but when you hit the post 5 times in the game, I mean, what else can you blame it on? I mean, there's a lot of chances they should have buried, but when you hit the post 5 times, there's not much you can do.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. The puck luck there in this game was frustrating. I mean, the Ducks really should have won this game. They could have had at least 2 or 3 more goals in this game and really could have put it away early. It's just unfortunate, just the way it went. They did go to the overtime, and we saw some craziness there. The Ducks, I don't know what it is in overtime with the 3-on-3, but for the Ducks this year, it just does not work. The Ducks have gone into this overtime 8 times now this year, and they've lost 5 times, and 3 times they've gone to the shootout where they've won one of those 3 times. The 2 losses were both against actually Vancouver in the shootout. But the overtime was a little crazy. We had the play, towards the end there, Botnin actually goes around the defense. He gets hauled down, Eddie. The refs don't call anything. He crashes in to the net. Kind of frustrating there. And then, the Ducks actually end up getting the puck. They come down. Looks like they're about to score in the last 10, 15 seconds. Getzlaf goes with the drop pass to Perry and ends up giving it to Sedin. Sedin goes the length of the ice, and even with Perry back checking, at least Anderson stopped it, because I thought, oh my God, here we go. Are we going to lose it right here? And thankfully we didn't. But, that last 2 minutes was just really crazy in the overtime.
Yeah, again, Getzlaf making a drop pass to where he thinks Perry should be in his mind, and of course nobody's there, and drop passes it right to Henrik Sedin, who gets a breakaway and almost puts it away. Luckily for us, there wasn't a lot of time left, and he didn't have a lot of time to think about the move, and Freddie was able to stay with him. But yeah, I mean, we all wondered why Getzlaf doesn't shoot the puck more often. I mean, there was a couple times on the games before this where in 5-on-5 in regulation he has a lot of chances to shoot the puck. He decides to take that extra move or make the extra pass and doesn't shoot the puck. I mean, he's got a good shot. I think he overthinks the situation sometimes. I mean, he's right in front of the net. He's in pretty much no better scoring position than he could have been in, and he decides to make the drop pass. I don't know what's going through his head. Somebody's got to tell him. I'm sure somebody's told him to shoot the puck more, and for some reason he just doesn't listen.
Yeah, the overtime situation is frustrating, and and I've said this with Getzlaf in the overtime. I really think if you're going to put him out there, you're going to have to put 2 speed guys out there with him in those situations. And the drop pass, this one wasn't as bad as the one against Arizona earlier in the season when there was absolutely no way around. This one, it surprised Perry, but he could have got it and missed it. So, it was a little bit unfortunate there. But again, like you said, your point blank range, just shoot the puck, hopefully get a bounce, a rebound, or it goes in or whatnot. So, I don't know. I don't really want to beat a dead horse on that part. The Ducks, at least got a point out of this and, moved up in the standings, which was a big thing on this road trip. The Ducks ended up going ahead of Edmonton. They go ahead of Calgary. Today, Arizona lost in a overtime game. So the way it looks now, the standings are so crazy, Eddie, but this is how it looks now. You have Arizona with 40 points, Vancouver 39, San Jose 38, and then the Ducks are 37. So, I mean, we're right there. We're in the hunt. We have games on Arizona, 1 game on Arizona. We have 2 games on Vancouver. And actually San Jose has 1 game on us. So, it's a tight race, and we've got the homestand coming up. 8 games that the Ducks are going to play at home, and this is going to be big. One of the fan questions we had, Eddie, about this was from Alexa, and the question is the Ducks are still in the hunt after a bumpy start, and they have the 8-game homestand. Is this where we should see the win streak begin? And what do you think, Eddie?
Realistically, I think it should be where the win streak begins. I mean, we've got 2 games coming up where they should win. You've got Winnipeg on Sunday, and then you have Toronto on Wednesday, and then a harder opponent in St. Louis on Friday. And realistically, you should start off with 2 wins there. And those are 2 teams, especially Winnipeg, who have been struggling on the road this season and just struggling, in general to win on the road and win at home and pick up big points. And those are games the Ducks are going to have to get off to a good start and winning. And then from there, you've got to go and face Detroit on the next Sunday after that. You've got Ottawa on the Wednesday. And then you've got Dallas, LA, and Minnesota, 3 really hard games in a row there. You get a couple of days rest, but those are going to be 3 hard opponents no matter on the home or at home or on the road. So it's going to be a tough road homestand here, but I mean, realistically, this could be where they get the win streak going.
Yeah, and I think it really starts this week. We talked about what's coming up here, and they're playing Winnipeg and Toronto. These are teams that they can beat. Winnipeg is last in the Central. and you got Toronto that's towards the bottom of the Atlantic. I'm not saying that they're easy games because no game is easy in hockey. Let's just be clear about that. But they should win these 2 games this week, Eddie. Just like last week, we said that the Ducks should win 2 out of 3, and they, basically 2.5 because they got the 5 points. But this week they should definitely win 2 out of 3. They've got to beat Toronto. They've got to beat Winnipeg. And like you said, the Blues is going to be tough. The Blues have been fighting it out in the Central. They're in second, and it's kind of the similar situation to the Pacific. Dallas is kind of running away with the Central right now, and everyone else is trying to follow suit. But St. Louis has played very well. They're 23-13-4. That's going to be a tough battle, and St. Louis plays us tough. The last time we lost to them by a bad bounce. I mean, it's a puck luck thing, but that's kind of the way it's gone, Eddie. But the Ducks should at least get off to a good start this next week.
Yeah, and one thing that we were kind of talking about last season in how that usually when teams come to face us at home, they would have to face LA either before us or after us, and we were kind of pissed off about that. LA would always get to face the backup goalies for those respective teams, and we'd always get the starting goalies. Well, this year it's sort of the opposite, and since St. Louis has to play LA the day after playing us, there might be a slight advantage as we get to play Brian Elliott, who's only started 11 games this season. He's only won 5, has 2.36 goals against average and a .916 save percentage. So he doesn't have terrible numbers, but I mean Jake Allen, the guy in front of him this season, has been their go-to guy, and most likely you would expect him to get the start against LA. So being able to be in that position this year is a little bit more beneficial. Obviously, we'd like to switch places with the LA Kings and have their record and not have to worry about winning these tough games, but being able to face the backup is going to be a little bit of a bonus in this game coming up.
Yeah, I have to agree. And the big question mark for this homestand is the news that came out today. The Ducks reported that Cam Fowler is going to be out for a total of 4 to 6 weeks. He's already been out for 1 week, so it puts that time frame at 3 to 5 weeks. And we've got a lot of fan questions about this. Asking. We've had 2 or 3 on here asking about not only the status of Fowler, but also Dupree as well. There's been no update on Dupree again. I'm sorry, folks. I mean, I get, I think I get a tweet every day about it, and I think Eric Stevens and Dan Wood and all of us get tweets about it, but there's no update on Dupree. And obviously with this news with Fowler, it kind of puts the Ducks in a little bit of a bind. But, Eddie, with Theodore in there and the way he's been playing, I think the Ducks are going to be okay.
Yeah, obviously losing a guy, and we mentioned this on the last podcast when Fowler first went down, that losing a guy who eats so many minutes and was a minute leader for the Ducks is going to be hard. But we saw Sami Vatanen and Hampus Lindholm step up and really take some more minutes and play really well. And then Theodore comes up and, he doesn't contribute immediately offensively to the game. And I mean, not a lot of people expect him to put up points in his first few games, but the thing that surprised me most, I mean, I think everybody knows that he's an offensive defenseman. I mean, the seasons he had in junior were, pretty amazing, and the points that he was able to put up, he set some records as well. But that the fact that he's worked so hard on his defensive game and become a real solid two-way defenseman was really evidenced in these first 3 games, especially in the game last night against Vancouver. I think he's made some really smart plays. He was definitely less nervous than his debut night in Calgary, and I think he's just worked really hard on becoming more a solid two-way guy, and I'm definitely comfortable having him in here for the next 3 to 5 weeks.
Yeah, I agree with you. And we had a fan question about that too from Kyle. He asked about the power play, and his question was, you see Theodore on the power play, and why didn't we see Richie get a chance, on the power play as much? And we talked about this a little bit before we started the show, and I think the big issue is just players at the point, Eddie. I mean, you have Getzlaf and Botman that usually do that on the power play. You bring in Theodore, it's kind of a third option there. The Ducks have plenty of forwards, to go down low and go in front of the net. And not to take anything away from Richie, I mean, I'm sure he would have been good in that role too. But I just think right now Theodore's value is a little bit more important, especially with Dupree and Fowler being out.
Yeah, and that is his calling card too as well. I mean, Richie is a big power forward, and I mean, it's not like he was a power play quarterback in the juniors. It's not like he was putting up huge power play numbers as well. I mean, the one of the reasons the Ducks drafted Theodore especially was because of his offensive ability and the fact that they thought he could eventually quarterback the power play. No surprise to me when he comes up with a guy like Fowler going down, you would expect him to get some power play minutes, and they're showing a lot of confidence in him, putting him on the first power play unit and give him that responsibility right off the bat. But I think, like you said, with so many other guys being able to do what Richie could have done and having more experience doing what he could have done on the power play, I think that's the only reason that he didn't end up getting a chance.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think that the Ducks will be fine on the homestand. I mean, obviously it's going to be 3 weeks here. They're going to have 8 games. Fowler will be out for at least these 3 weeks, as we know. So, I mean, that's I think going to be the big key. And then the other, obviously, the big hot topic too is the goalie situation, Eddie. A lot of questions about Gibson and Anderson and what's going on. We had Juan ask us about Gibson being the number one starter now and his play. And what do you think about him even going for the Vezina? I mean, if you look at him now, he's got 4 shutouts in the league, which is second, 1.68 goals against, and a .931 save percentage. I think he's a strong candidate for it for sure, Eddie. I mean, I think this next 8 weeks is really going to tell us a lot about this team in terms of the defense and Gibson and how we're going to play. But he's the number one goalie right now. And I mean, he's got back-to-back shutouts. I mean, he's been on fire. I look for him to come out on Sunday and play well against the Jets. And, there's other leading contenders for the Vezina, but I think, what happens in the next 3 weeks will really tell us a lot.
No, yeah, he's definitely up there. I mean, he's leading the league right now in goals against average. He obviously hasn't played as many games as the other guys up there, but I mean, there's been talk of James Reimer being in the discussion for Toronto if he continues to play well, and I mean, they're not going to pick up enough wins, I don't think, for him to be in contention. But if John Gibson can get enough starts for the end of the season, I mean, we saw Andrew Hammond come in for Ottawa last year and have just an unbelievable run, of like 30 or so games at the end of the season for him to get even in the discussion for the Vezina. Obviously, he didn't win because Price had such an outstanding season, and really, realistically, I think it could be the same kind of situation. Even if Gibson continues his amazing form and finishes strong with 25, 30 wins, I think the way Holtby is playing and how well the Caps are doing this season, I think right now he has to be the guy you would think would win unless something happens to him. I mean, he's really him and unfortunately Jonathan Quick are the two guys you would probably tip your cap to right now.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think it's going to be a tough situation coming down the stretcher, especially with Gibson hasn't played as many with Anderson being the starter, so that like you said, it kind of matters too how many games you play and how many wins that the team gets as well. So if the Ducks start going on a crazy win streak in this homestand, then yeah, I think his chances definitely go up. And along those lines, another question we had was from Crystal. She asked, do you think Gibby's the part of the turnaround, or do you think it's the Ducks figuring out how to limit the chances on the defense as part of it? On this one, Eddie, I really think it's both. I think the Ducks have played pretty good defense throughout the season. They've had a couple games where they've had a few lapses here and there, but I think it's been the defense and it's been Gibson. I think it's been a combination of both. What do you think?
Yeah, no, it's definitely been a combination of both. They've been playing well defensively all season. I mean, they've been among the lowest goals against in the Western Conference and even in the league for most of the season. They've been itching around the top 5, top 10 in shots against per game. Their defense has been good all season, and I think obviously with the way Gibson has played in those last 2 games, if you're not going to allow a lot of shots per game and you're not going to allow a lot of goals, you still need your goalie to come in and stop those shots that you do allow on the net. And we saw those 2 games where Gibson got back-to-back shutouts. He's still riding the shutout streak going into his next start. So, I mean, his play is definitely key to the success as well as how well they've bought into this new system.
Yeah, I mean the shutout streak by him has been remarkable, and it's surprising. I had to look up all these stats over the last couple of days because people are asking about Anderson and Gibson, but the streak holder is still Ilya Bryzgalov. Surprisingly, I know a lot of people talk about Jaguar, but Bryzgalov had the longest streak in 2006, 249 minutes and 15 seconds. So he was the longest. Will Gibson get there? I don't know. He's about halfway there, but we'll see what happens on Sunday. But if he plays well and stays the course like he's been doing in the Ducks defense, even with Fowler out, it's going to be a good thing for us. And we've had more questions about that too. Scott asked us too, with Fowler and Dupree. out, but hopefully coming back, do you think the Ducks will make a deep run? And I really do. I haven't given up on this team, especially the way that they played this last week and a half or so, or at least the last 4 games plus. I think they can, Eddie. I mean, this Pacific Division is very weak, obviously besides LA, and the Ducks can easily finish in second place. And I think that the way that they're going now, that they'll be able to do that and even do well in the playoffs. It's going to be a question though of how healthy they can stay. If they can get Dupree and Fowler back, I mean, then they're going to be really loaded at the blue line, and they're going to be good. And don't forget Anderson too. I know a lot of fans go back and forth between Gibson and Anderson. Whoever's doing well, it's like that's your favorite guy, which I understand that. It makes sense, but we have 2 really good goalies. And I think we're going to be fine, Eddie. I think the Ducks will still make the playoffs.
Yeah, and the way the Ducks are playing too, and the way they do play, the style they play, it's playoff hockey. They play a physical game. They don't allow you a lot of shots on goal. The only issue this year, obviously, is they're not scoring goals, and I mean we've talked about that over past seasons with how the Kings haven't been able to score a lot of goals in some of the seasons that they've gone deep in the playoffs. And you look at teams like Dallas, who have 137 goals for right now, which is just a ridiculous number for this point in the season. And that type of hockey is still going to make them successful, but can you realistically see them keeping that up in the playoffs? And where teams are going to tighten up defensively, you're playing the best teams in the league. And I think if the Ducks can get some better puck luck, I know it's kind of corny to say that, but you would hope that their luck would improve and they can get some better scoring chances. And as long as they keep up this style and this good defense, I think they definitely have a chance to go far if they make it to the playoffs.
Yeah, and I brought this up before, and I know some people, kind of shy away from it, but hey, 2011, 2012. There was some team in LA that played terrible during the season and then turned it on at the end of the season and went all the way. So, you know what? If they can do it, the Ducks can do it. I really believe that. And that's what the Ducks are doing. As you said, they're playing solid defense. They're blocking shots. They're clogging up the blue line. They're limiting the other team's chances. You have Gibson, who's on fire right now. You have Anderson, who's still playing well as well in the net. So the Ducks are looking good. And it kind of leads us to another question we had from George. He asked, if the Ducks make the playoffs, what changes would you like them to do, to make a strong run? And we've talked about this, Eddie. As far as trying to get other players and whatnot, I mean, it's hard. We've talked about the long contracts and all the new players and whatnot. I don't really know if we'll even be able to do that. Like I said, I don't envy Murray's position. It's very tough right now. You've changed a lot of things, and you've taken some heat for it. And in his own credit, he's been up front and said, hey, yeah, I put in all this stuff and it hasn't worked. But I really think the key for this team, Eddie, is just to score more goals. And I know it sounds oversimplified what I'm saying, but it's true. You're last in the league in scoring goals. You can't even get 2 goals a game. And, the Ducks are finding ways to win right now in the last 4 games. So, or at least get points in the last 4 games too. So I think that's the key. If the Ducks can start scoring a couple more goals a game, that's really all they need to do. I don't think there's a big name player that's really going to change anything. I mean, would it help? Yes, of course it would help to go out and get a big name, left winger that you could put with Perry and Getzlaf, or a big name Shea Weber type, defenseman. But I have faith in this team and the way that they're playing right now. If they just pick it up the offense, I think they'll be good, Eddie.
Yeah, and they're doing a lot of things right. I mean, the defensive side of the game is good. The goaltending with Freddie and Gibson is good, and I mean they just have to score goals. They got to get some more lucky bounces. They got to be there, for the rebounds. And I think not moving any of the guys currently on the roster, but maybe using some of the prospects that, I mean, we got a crowded blue line already. They're all young. There's a lot of guys that we all think have a shot at making this blue line eventually. Obviously, I think Theodore and Montour are untouchable, and Vatanen, Lindholm, Fowler. If we're gonna make a run, you're not gonna want to deal those guys. But Marcus Pettersson's having a good World Juniors with Sweden. He's a guy you might maybe consider moving because of how well Theodore's come up and done, and how young this team is on the blue line. And maybe you package him with a pick or with somebody else, a depth forward, and move him for a different guy, and maybe Louis Eriksson in Boston, or another UFA, Kyle Poso with the Islanders. If that opportunity presents itself, that could definitely help them score more goals. And I think that's really all you got to do is you got to keep the system going, and maybe add a guy near the deadline.
Yeah, I agree with you, and that's probably what we're going to see. I don't see the Ducks doing a lot of moves. Come this trade deadline this year. Will they make some? They might, but I don't know if they're going to make a lot. And that kind of brings us to another fan question. We've got a lot of them this week, which is awesome. We had Matt asking us about Gibson and his play and whether or not, and with the situation with Anderson, should he be a number one goalie on another team? And kind of what's our take on it. And I mean, with goalies, it's difficult. Goalies are a different breed than forwards and defensemen. Goalies do want to be number one. They want to be the guy. If they tell you that they don't, then they're lying. I mean, that's just the truth. Goalies want to be the main guy, and they want to be the leader on the team as far as in between the pipes. So that's the way it is. And some of my friends that play goalie will tell you that. I've talked to them, and they've told me the same things. So. I think Anderson would like to be a number one goalie somewhere else, as Matt also talked about in his question, about the performance in the regular season, the playoffs. They've both done pretty well, so it's a difficult thing. Hudobin is still down in the minors in San Diego, and he's not happy about being there. So he would love to come back up, especially if Anderson was moved. That would be a situation. But I don't know if Freddie's going to get moved, Eddie. I don't know. It's a good question. I don't see it happening at least during the season.
No, and it's a unique situation that, I mean, I don't want to say it's specific to the Ducks, but there's not a lot of teams out there that have two young goaltenders who are really, could be locks for a number one position on any team, or barring the elite goalies in the league. But I mean, Gibson could definitely start on this team and be a number one goalie, but you can't forget Freddie as well. I mean, he did everything for us last year in the playoffs. I mean, obviously we didn't end up going to the Stanley Cup Finals, and even in the regular season as well. And he's the guy that pushed Taylor out of with his play, and you can't forget about him either. And it's a tough situation with both of them coming up. Their contracts coming up at the end of the season. Luckily they're RFA, so it's a little bit easier to deal with, and you're not stuck moving them at the deadline because you're going to get nothing for them if you don't. Obviously both of them want to be the number one guy. And every goalie comes in the league and they want to start, and their agents are there for them too. Regarding that situation, and I think if Freddie thinks he can start somewhere else, or if Gibson thinks he can start somewhere else, then they might look to seek that out. So, but like you said, I don't really see them moving before the deadline because they do have the option to deal its rights, sometime around the draft if necessary.
Yeah, exactly. And another thing too, some people forget, Gibson got that extension signed, so he's got a couple more years added to his contract too. But that doesn't mean that he's safe either. I know some people go, oh, well, the guy signed an extension, he's good to go. Well, yeah, he did, but that still doesn't mean you can't be traded. Anybody could be traded anytime. And that was kind of some of the comments that Murray had made in the article that Eric Stevens had posted on the Register too. So, and that was kind of a scary thing because even Andrew Cogliano was saying, you know what, he's right, and we got to play better because that's what happens when you're struggling. Everybody's under the microscope. So. Just because Gibson's got that extension, it doesn't mean he's 100% safe too. I mean, obviously the way he's playing is definitely making it that way, but we'll have to wait and see. Um, that's really all the questions we had. We had a ton of questions about the Ducks, which has been great this week. But kind of shifting some gears and getting to some other hockey news as well. The news came out today about the All-Star game, Eddie, and your favorite player is the Pacific Division captain, John Scott from Arizona.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the other guys who got voted in, and I mean that relatively fair. I mean, there are a lot of guys in the Atlantic that might have deserved it a bit more than Jaromir Jagr, but he's having a good season. He's 43. I mean, he's probably in his last season. I think it's expected for him to get voted in. I mean, you see the same thing kind of in the NBA with Kobe Bryant having a struggling season for him, for his standards, and he gets voted into the All-Star game as one of the top guys. So no surprise there. Then Ovechkin. Not doing the best in the Metro, but he's on a good team. He's a popular guy. He's captain of the best team in the league, and no surprise for him getting voted in. And then Patrick Kane in the Central being the best player in the league right now, and on one of the most popular teams in the league, you would expect him to come in. But you get to the Pacific Division where pretty much everybody's struggling but the LA Kings, and you see John Scott get voted in as All-Star game captain. And I mean, it kind of just shows you what's wrong with the voting in the All-Star game with allowing fan voting. I mean, they've limited it down to just the captains this year, and people still found a way to exploit it and vote in a guy like John Scott. Of course, it ends up being in the Pacific Division, so it kind of messes up any chances for any Ducks players to make it in. But it's an interesting situation. I mean, it seems like the fans are voting this way so they can eliminate fan voting. I mean, I think after this, they definitely won't have it. It looks like he's going to be the captain. I haven't heard much on it. I haven't heard him come out and say he's not going to be. The league has said they've come out and said that he's won legitimately. So if he's going to be the captain, I guess unless he drops out and then they pick the second place person, which I believe was Johnny Gaudreau, which is a little bit more deserving considering he's second in points in the Pacific. But yeah, it's definitely interesting, and it kind of epitomizes the All-Star game as a whole.
Yeah, and I mean, and we had one fan question too about it. Aaron asked, how could this happen? And obviously it happened with the voting because I remember I had heard some rumblings earlier a few weeks ago that people were, cracking jokes and saying, "Oh, let's get John Scott in there," and ha 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 ha. And then this final last week, you saw that he was, leading in the Pacific. And I don't know about you guys out there, but I was on mine voting for Ducks players left and right as many times as I could because I think the limit was 10 a day, but I was putting them in as many times as I could to try and get some guys in there. But I mean, it's going to be an interesting situation. I've never really been a big fan of the All-Star game, and I know they're doing this 3-on-3 tournament style, but it's going to be very interesting, Eddie, to see kind of how this plays out in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, and luckily for I think everybody involved, that the only thing that is resulting from fan voting is the captains. The hockey operations for the NHL is going to pick the other players from each division. I believe there's 6 forwards, 3 defensemen, and 2 goalies who get picked and to play on the rest of the teams behind the captains. And unfortunately, there doesn't seem like there will be any Ducks picked if you're going by points and how well some teams have played. I mean, you would expect Taylor Hall, Johnny Gaudreau, Joe Pavelski, the Sedin twins, and then I would take your pick from the next 6th forward to get in. Could be Draisaitl, pick Toffoli, Kopitar, or Carter from the Kings, and then you got your defensemen, probably Burns, Oliver Ekman-Larsson, Drew Doughty. Those are the top 3 point getters on defense for the Pacific Division, and then your goalies. Jonathan Quick and Martin Jones have been really good this season. I mean, maybe if Gibson can win his next couple of games and continue to be hot, he might have a chance. But yeah, realistically, we might see no Ducks on this team, so it might not even be that fun to watch anyway.
Yeah, exactly, and we'll just have to wait and see what happens as far as how the hockey ops decides, the rest of the players and whatnot over the next, like we said, a couple weeks. Some other hockey news too as well. The World Juniors have been going on. If you haven't been following, big one today, Eddie. Finland knocked out Canada, so Finland's going to be one of those 4 teams, in this the close to final round here.
Yeah, they've got 2 draft eligible players who are probably going to go in the top 5 this year. Patrick Laine and Jesse Pujärvi, who've been leading the team and I believe leading the tournament as well. Jesse Pujärvi leads the whole tournament with 15 points. Patrick Laine is in 3rd with 11, and their line mate Sebastian Aho is a 2nd-round pick for the Carolina Hurricanes, is 2nd in scoring with 12 points. So that line has been the key for them, all throughout this whole tournament. That they all put up 3 points today against Canada, and squeaked out a 6-4 win, 6-5 win, and it's good for them. They're their home team. I mean, Nottinen's obviously on the team. He picked up a goal today as well. He's utilized more as a 2-way defensive forward, so kind of similar to how Kessler is utilized for us. But it's definitely good for the home team to go on. I mean, unfortunately for me, Canada got knocked out, and it's tough to see them go out. But they'll have to go on and play Sweden and play the other 2 Ducks prospects, and Marcus Pettersson and Jakob Larsson in the semifinal, and then the U.S. go through and play Russia in the other semifinal. But it's been a really good tournament so far, and been impressed from the Ducks prospects that are at the tournament.
Yeah, and we talked about USA, man. They took out Czechoslovakia 7-0 in their last game, and I think we were talking about the other game before. They scored 10 goals. So, I mean, I would think USA takes out Russia. I don't want to say that's going to happen, but I mean, there's a good chance USA gets in there in the final, and then it's hard to root for, but you got Sweden or Finland. And speaking of Finland, they actually retired Teemu Selänne's jersey this last week. We posted a little article on that with some Olympic stats, and I pulled some videos that I could post on there. I have the TSN link on there for the short video. I couldn't get it to embed in the article for some reason. There's some issue I had on WordPress. But if you go on there, there's another person that put it on YouTube. There's the TSN one. And then there's also the full version from one of the Finland news sites, so you can go on there and see that as well. If you didn't catch it, it's on. It's under the tab when you go on Ducks and Pucks. It's under the Teemu Selänne tab, so that's on there as well. So you can check that out. And that's really it. That's all the news that's been going around the league and the world as far as hockey the last couple of weeks. This homestand is going to be big. Coming up 8 games, going to be exciting. If you happen to go to the games, myself and a handful of people usually hang outside of Section 417 in between the periods. Still working on having the watch parties. There's a lot of home games, so we may have some towards the end of the month when the Ducks go on the road. I've got to do some double checking on that, but we'll get that for you. And other than that, we'll be back, we're getting on a regular schedule here, Eddie, every week. And we'll hope to see you at some of the games. And let's go Ducks.